And welcome back to another episode of Our Hometown Podcast. My guest today is Chula Vista Police Department's Chief, Roxana Kennedy. Just before we get started, I want to let you know that this podcast has been sponsored by ServPro of Chula Vista. They've served over 10,000 people. If you experience an emergency and they're available 24/7 to respond to your emergency, just go to servprochulavista.com. So we're going to dive into this. I've been preparing for this interview for a while, and I've had a lot of material to work on because I've seen you a number of times present the Foundation Gala, the District 1. And I have to tell you, for those of you who do not live in Chula Vista, you're really missing out because as you listen to more of our podcasts and you see some of the leaders in our community of Chula Vista, you can't help but fall in love with this city. I did when I first moved here. And you heard my story before about how I ended up in Chula Vista. And I'll probably tell it again some other time. But there is something unique about Chula Vista. And every time I interview somebody who is part of a solution, part of moving our city forward, it always makes me love it more. So today, I really want to do a kind of a unique conversation with Chief Kennedy because I just love where her head's at. And I just love her style of policing. And I believe a lot of people do too. But I'm going to let her kind of run with this because
you're putting me on the spot.
I am. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be held against you.
I didn't know this was going to be an interrogation.
I'm actually pretty good at that, by the way. But I wanted people to understand that keeping a city the size of Chula Vista safe is no easy task. And there's a lot of nuances. But Chief Kennedy has figured it out. And I'm going to let her explain to you how she's figured it out because from what I hear on the street and the people I talk to, they all agree you figured it out. So let's kind of talk a little bit about just Chula Vista. Let's do a little quick state of the Chula Vista. Where are we at as far as rankings and where are we going forward?
Well, I'm very blessed. I've been a part of Chula Vista for over 30 years. So I started as an officer at Chula Vista PD, never expecting to one day be the chief of police. And I do have a way of sharing with my officers that you should always be cognizant of who you're sitting next to because you never know one day that person might be your chief of police. But Chula Vista is a very diverse community. I mean, and when you look at our police department is diverse also. We are the second largest city in San Diego County. And what I'm very proud of is that we work in very close relationship with our community. And I do believe that's what the difference is in Chula Vista, is that not only our city staff, everybody who works for the city of Chula Vista, but also at our police department and with our connection with the community. We are very engaged with them. I tell my officers that when you invest in the community, they invest in you. And that, I believe, is the difference at Chula Vista Police Department. So when you talk about crime, and I'm really careful about crime because, when you've been victimized, you don't want to hear crime stats because they don't feel real to you because your perception has been changed by the fact that you've been victimized. So I'm very sensitive to that when I talk to people about stats. But I'm also very proud of the fact that being the second largest city in San Diego County, last year, the Sandag report came out for mid-2021, and out of all incorporated cities, Chula Vista was the safest city in San Diego County. And that in itself we're 52 square miles and growing. And this year it came out again, and I think most people have realized that there has been more of a challenges that we have faced. Crime has started increasing everywhere. But again, in 2022 mid-year Sandag, we are the second safest city in San Diego County, only second to Coronado, which is a beautiful community, very different than Chula Vista, and much smaller. So we still feel very, very proud of the fact that we are the second safest city in San Diego County. And how do you do that? I mean, that is, I think, being engaged with your community, understanding the challenges. I mean, I pay attention, and so do my staff. We look at all aspects. We look at social media, which sometimes can be very challenging to look at. But we do look at what people are putting out there, what's happening in their communities, because sometimes the challenge that we have is that the community doesn't call us. And we've gone through some challenges in the last couple of years in law enforcement that have been the toughest challenges I have ever seen in my 30 plus years of law enforcement. And I was in my team, we were devastated by the things that we were hearing about law enforcement. So what we did with that, instead of being negative, we took a deep dive. We took everything in. We started interacting more, even more so than we've done in the past, building bridges in the community, reaching out to people who have never thought about contacting law enforcement. And I've seen the value in this. I've seen, we call it compassionate policing. We think that's really important. Some people might think that as a soft on crime term. In reality, it's very tough on crime.
And I've mentioned that I was talking with somebody and I was telling them how proud I was of our police department. And I use that term and they were like, oh, it sounds like your police department are weak. And I go, no, you're not listening to me. You don't understand. Let me explain to you what it means. And I kind of gave them some examples of what you taught me of what compassionate policing is. So it can be misunderstood, but the purpose of it, go ahead and dive into that. But it's a unique concept, I think.
Well, when you look at policing, I tell my officers to look at it differently. So you deal with some of the same things over and over again, and it can become, I've seen officers become robotic about things, right? And just the facts, ma'am, which I don't care for that term, but, so you have to think about this. I say, everybody in my family is not perfect, and I didn't have a perfect life. All of us are broken in many ways, right? People call us when they're dealing with the toughest day of their life. Usually they don't call us to say, I just want to say thank you. It doesn't happen that often. They call us because they need us to help us maneuver through difficulties in their life. And officers need to understand that sometimes I tell them, when you are interacting with someone and you start to feel like, I want you to stop and ask yourself this. If that was my mother, would I want my officer to treat her in that manner? And if you stop for a second and say, oh, I would hope they would treat my mom a little bit better than that, right? Then you need to check yourself and you need to go back and you need to think about that and think about how you're dealing with people. When you use compassion, when you deal with people, sometimes it's difficult, without a doubt. But when you get into a knockdown, I just want to point this out. My officers use force. Okay. A force is a part of our job. The question you should ask is, was it reasonable and was it justified? Was there a reason that the officers had to use force? And usually the reason that they use force is the actions of the individual that they're contacting, right?
So there was a situation that happened a couple of years ago, and I think this is when I was first introduced to this compassionate policing because I really didn't understand it. But you remember the incident on Rutgers and Telegraph Canyon Road on that house on the corner where the man.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And so I can't tell you where I sourced the information, and you can definitely correct me if I'm wrong. But at some point, someone had mentioned to me that after that situation and debriefing, and after that, you reached out to the family.
I reached out. So this was a very sad, tragic situation of an officer involved, shooting of an individual who tried to was fleeing officers, had carjacked a vehicle, was fleeing, driving down the wrong way of the road, went through an intersection, T-boned another car. The car overturned. It was a military guy on his way home. It's tragic. He's okay. But then the gentleman tried to break into a house filled with children. It was very, very frightening experience for them. And then pulled a gun on officers. And he was ultimately shot and killed. But what I said to my officers that day is, as I saw this gentleman who had been deceased, and you could definitely tell that it was family members who were coming to the area, I said I wanted you to put themselves in their shoes, because if that was their family member, the mother that I saw was devastated because that was her son. Okay, that was her son, and she remembers the little boy, that was a toddler, bouncing him on her knee, and nobody wishes for their family member to grow up and be involved in criminal activity, right? So I think the way you treat people makes a difference. And that's what I try. And it's not always easy. I mean, it sounds like it's an easy thing to do. It's not always easy, but it's the right thing to do. And we talk about taking the higher road. Even when it's the harder thing to do, it's the right thing to do. And when you use force with someone, you dust them off afterwards. You get them the help that they need, and it didn't have to be that way. And so I think that's an important thing for officers to realize. It doesn't mean that you're soft on crime. You do what you have to do, but you don't relish in it.
Right.
It's not what
No.
I wanted. I didn't come into law enforcement so that I could use force. That's certainly not what I wanted to do.
It begs the bigger question. I think this was part of this dialogue I had was, it even goes back to at what point in that young man's life did he stray?
Mhm.
And could there have been earlier intervention and prevention? Could someone have identified him and got him onto a program, whether it was after school programs or something else? You always want, you can never Monday morning quarterback.
And
but
sometimes it does. And some of the work that we do, we're able to reach people. And, I feel like that we have an opportunity of showing them that through compassionate policing, maybe something that we say to them is going to make a difference. And if it doesn't, there's alternatives that people have if they want to keep a life of crime. Sometimes I've talked to a gentleman the other day that told me he overdosed 8 times on fentanyl, and he had Narcan each time that helped bring him back. And now he finally has found the light, and he's out there working to help people who are out on the streets. And he talks about the interaction that my officers on the homeless outreach team had with him. To me, that's what it's all about.
So last Saturday at the South Bay Pumpkin Smash, we had Sergeant Johnson, or is it Jackson? I'm Brian Jackson out there, and we had a bunch of displays. And he came up to me afterwards, and he was really smiling. And I said, "How'd it go?" He goes, "Oh, we had so much fun." He goes, "I had a lot of stuff laid out on the table, but you know what was the most popular item? Was a sticker badge." He goes, "Every kid wanted that." And a couple of years ago, that would have been the same case, but there was this digression. There was this pushback. And I think for him, it was an affirmation that people are now starting to think, law enforcement's good. I want to be an officer. I want to wear the badge of honesty and of protection. And I think that's a good turning point in this conversation that, yeah, we could hit a bumpy road, not at any era of the police department, but just society hit a bumpy road for a couple of years. And I think our department did very well dealing with that. But now we are starting to see a re-engagement and respect back to the police department. And I think that is minor that might seem to some people. When you're talking to children and that's important to them, well, that's our future adults. And that's that's our future. And that's a good sign.
Right. And there is I call it the pendulum swing. It's going back to a more balanced position. But even through the challenges, because I think challenges create opportunities. I believe it, even though it's hard while you're going through them. And I would not want to go through what we did for the last 2 years. But we've learned a lot through what we've gone through the last couple of years now. And we've learned about what is important in policing and what we don't ever want to be in policing. So, I mean, I like to look at things from an optimistic perspective. And I've met people that I might not have ever met before in policing. I've heard stories from people about negative encounters with law enforcement that they've had that have kind of changed their opinions about policing. And so what do we do with that? We've created some courses and some training at our police department, not to bash law enforcement, but to say, we want you to hear the stories from people, why people have felt the way that they feel. And then you have an opportunity to change things. You have an opportunity to make them feel differently about policing. And I believe that's what we've done in Chula Vista.
And I can attest to that. So I've had 2 situations.
Is this tickets that you've got?
No, actually. Number of years ago, when my daughter was still living at home, she came home and she was very upset because she had a very scary situation with a rideshare driver. And so we called Chula Vista Police Department, and they didn't come right away. This was an after the fact, so there were probably other priorities. But eventually, officers showed up and they interviewed her and took her statement, and they did treat her with respect. And I know who those 2 officers are, and one of them has been promoted, rightfully so. And so I got a glimpse at, it's the first, you don't ever want police to come to your house, but I wanted my daughter to have a chance to air her concerns and file a report because it was the right thing to do. Now, on the other hand, me personally, I was driving down a street. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't like drag racing, but I took a corner on a yellow light a little bit too aggressively.
I like the way you're carefully explaining how you didn't do anything wrong.
Oh no, I did something wrong. I did something wrong. I mean, I took that corner faster than I should have. At the time, the light turned red, and an officer pulled me over, Officer Rodriguez. And, I was at fault. I was ready to accept the consequences of my actions. But he showed me compassion. He said, it wasn't the smartest thing for you to do, but there was nobody else on the road. And it just, optics weren't good in what you did. And I said, you're absolutely right. I take responsibility. And he showed me grace. But he said it in a way that reminded me that I need to be more diligent and I need to be more careful on how I drive. And though we're adults and we think that we're more mature about our decisions, the fact is that sometimes we take risks too. And sometimes we need somebody to remind us that those risks aren't always wise and prudent. And sometimes we just need to be put in check. And he did that. And I respect him for that. I would have accepted the results either way.
And they have the discretion to decide whether or not they write a ticket. There are no quotas like people think that there are, but there are not. And their job is to educate as well as to sometimes the education is necessary with the citation. And I think it's all in the matter in the way that you present the information. People are never happy when they get a ticket. And I know you probably didn't wake up that morning saying, I can't wait to go out and drive my car and I hope I get a ticket today. It's not the reality.
Right.
But there is an important factor in what we do in law enforcement. It's to prevent, it's to make certain that you understand so you don't end up in that car accident or end up in an accident where you harm other people. That's the goal.
So you use the words prevent. So that's a great segue into your proactive policing, because we couldn't show you the videos, but we're hoping that we can put links into the article. So November's issue is going to feature Chief Kennedy on the cover, and we're going to kind of do a deep dive in some of the state of the city addresses you've done. But there are 2 videos that you showed at the gala that I hopefully can plug in through a QR code into this article where people can see. And I'm hoping you'll narrate before that.
I think those 2 videos that you have are from our drone program, Drone as First Responder.
Right.
They're already on our website, so
Okay.
it should be very easy for anyone to go and look at those as well, or you to link to those.
So we're going to talk a little bit about this proactive policing, because when you really understand what it's done, first of all, how this drone program is being recognized internationally, first of all. Second of all, there is evidence, physical evidence that has shown where it has de-escalated at least 2 situations that could have gone horribly wrong with other optics, with other response. But because the drone gave a bird's eye view, a view that officers don't always get,
Right.
especially before the officers arrive.
Let me give a little bit of background so
please
it makes sense to the audience. So we have something called Drone as First Responder. And so these drones are actually flying to actual radio calls. They don't randomly patrol through the city. There's not just drones flying around filming everything. They're actually responding to radio calls. We also have other drones at our department, which many agencies do, that are called, they're like reactive drones after something occurs. So they can crime map a whole traffic accident. They could be used on a SWAT operation if we needed to have good, aerial surveillance of what's happening. The drones are much less expensive to run than it is with an actual helicopter. So it's been hugely beneficial. We are the first agency in the United States that has had this Drone as First Responder program. We've had to go through FAA certification. All of our drone pilots are Part 107 certified. So it's an amazing program, right? We're now almost at 13,000 missions. We've been flying since 2018. And the thing that I want our community to understand is you'll read stuff out there, and people will put out information that is completely inaccurate. You can go on our webpage and it'll show you everything about our drone program. And then we also, when you talk about transparency, 24 hours later, it will show flight paths of where our drone flew, the information on the call. But the video footage is protected,
Sure.
okay? Because we want to protect everyone's privacy. And that's up for debate with lots of people. I mean, we utilize our drone footage just like our body worn camera footage, and we think that we protect that as much as possible. It's an investigative record. Now, what the thing that's important about these drones is that when they fly, they don't have to go through traffic lights. They can go right directly. The moment that drone goes up in the air, the camera is a 30 zoom optical lens that can key in like almost 3 miles down the road. You can start getting to the actual scene. If there was, for instance, a major accident or a shooting or something, that drone can get there way before any officer can get there and start feeding that information to our officers. So on our cell phones and on our MDCs and our computers, we can watch the footage in there. And so from the perspective of being an officer, if I had that footage back in the days when I started 30 years ago, wow, it would have been amazing for me to actually see the scene and see exactly what's going on and see, okay, there's a subject in the southwest corner. There's something in his right hand. And I'd be talking to the drone operator. Is there any possibility that you could get a little bit closer? We can see what's in his hand, or you can get the license plate of the vehicle. And the two examples that you were referring to was a call came out of a man with a gun in front of Roberto's Taco Shop on Broadway in Chula Vista. And the call's coming in. He's waving a gun around. We don't know what's happening. He's acting peculiar. Just the behavior seems odd. We don't know if he's under the influence, if he's mentally ill, what's happening. And the drone operator was able to get there in like 90 seconds, start feeding that information to my officer. So a call in front of a business of a man waving a gun is a significant incident. Okay.
Right.
That's going to raise the adrenaline of everybody responding. Also the citizens that were there, people were like backing up and they didn't know what was going on. Right. So my officers, my teleoperators, what we call the drone operators, is watching and feeding information to the officers as they're rolling to the scene. And at one point, the man picks up the gun and puts it like towards his mouth. Okay. And so we're thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on? Is he going to commit suicide? We didn't know what was happening. And then he picks up a cigarette and puts it there and uses the gun to light the cigarette. Changes the whole dynamics of the whole incident, right?
Right.
All that information is, and you could see the smoke coming out of
Right.
the puffs coming out of his mouth, right? Now, officers are still going to be vigilant. They're going to be careful, but the way that they enter your mindset changes, right?
Right.
And we have seen tragic incidents where people don't have all the information. I always say officers do not have a crystal ball. We do not know what's going to happen. And so your adrenaline is flowing when you're responding to a call like that. And so in this instance, when you can feed more information, more real-time information to officers to make better decisions, it keeps the subjects we encounter safer, the community safer, and the officer safer. And to me, I don't know why we don't have this at every agency across the United States. We have been recognized and lauded for what we've done. We never did it for attention. We did it because I knew it was worth taking this risk to be able to. I tell my officers, this is not replacing officers. This is enhancing. It's giving you more information. And I mean, I was recently in Norway with Interpol and UAS Norway. They asked me to come and speak on behalf of our DFR program from the perspective of a chief. And I thought, what in the heck? Okay, I'll go there. This is interesting. And when I was there, I guess you just do what you're doing and you never realize how significant it is. We didn't realize the foundation that we were setting in Chula Vista, but they were in Interpol. They're talking about doing white papers on what we're doing here. There were people from all over the world there looking at what we're doing in Chula Vista. So we're pretty proud of
We should be.
what we are doing.
Because that situation in any other scenario, could have gone completely different.
Right.
And so many times it has, right? We look back at some of all these situations that could have been prevented. And everyone says, oh, well, if we only had,
Right.
if we only could. Well, in Chula Vista, it seems like we already have, and we already should.
Well, the other one was a group of kids down at the marina shooting off a gun, and people were all watching. They're seeing them shoot out into the water, and it ended up being a fake gun
Right.
also. And so, I mean, those are stories that could be tragic. There's one thing that happened out of this that people don't realize. So for the first time in 10 years, we have now met our priority one response times too. And so what does that mean? If we get to people quicker when they need us most, that is super important. So we're proud of the extra bonus out of the drone program as well. So it's helping us make sure that our officers have that real time information.
See, that's just another. Well, by the way, wasn't Chula Vista Police Department one of the first to have body cams on all their officers?
Yes, we were a beta test group that started with the Axon company. Gosh, I don't even remember how many years ago, but we were the first in San Diego County.
And that was, I think, under Chief Bejarano, right?
No, I believe that, yeah, Chief Bejarano.
Yeah.
I've worked now for Emerson, Bejarano, and myself, so there's been a lot of chiefs.
Well,
so.
Winters too, right?
Winters I did not work for, but I worked with him quite often. He was very, very connected to Chula Vista, well beyond his retirement years.
So I want to go back and let you guys know that as you learn more about Chula Vista, and I mean, I'm a walking billboard about Chula Vista. This is just, you heard from Mayor Mary a few weeks ago about the great things Chula Vista is doing. You're hearing from, I think, one of the most celebrated and intelligent police chiefs on duty right now. And just what she's sharing with you, again, is unique. Chula Vista seems to be this city that is always on the forefront of doing the right thing and figuring things out first. And we're going to hear from the fire chief next week. And I think once you've heard from all three, if you don't live in Chula Vista, you better find a realtor and decide to move here, because you're going to find that this place is just awesome. And I've invested a lot into this. So we've talked a lot about how Chula Vista is, and it's always been ranked. I mean, decades ago, we were ranked by FBI as one of the safest cities, population over 200,000. Before COVID, our police department was the most effective per capita the size. The only city close to it was Irvine, but Irvine is a whole different makeup demographically than Chula Vista. You see where we rank with, it's always been this kind of battle. Carlsbad, Coronado, and Chula Vista, all the C cities were always top ranked, and it was nice to see us ranked number one. But the drone program, that is something that is incredibly unique. And we're going to try to get this footage in the article where you can link and look at this. But you'll feel what we feel is it's a breath of like, oh, we did it right this time. We did something good.
You know what, Michael? The audience may not know about. We have an innovation initiative at Chula Vista, so we're always looking at innovative things to do and kind of thinking outside the box on how we protect our community. We also have Live 911, and if people don't know what that is, I mean, my officers have the ability to, when they're in their patrol car, they can geofence and say, okay, wherever my patrol car goes within a half mile, 1 mile radius, I want to hear all the incoming 911 calls. And so they'll actually hear these live 911 calls. And what it has done is given them more information. They can hear the dispatchers talking to people. They can hear how challenging it is to try to get information out of people when they're upset, or they can hear the voice inflection and what's happening in the call. And then maybe someone missed, because sometimes the dispatchers have a lot to type in relatively quickly, and they're trying to ask questions to give information to the officer. But sometimes they miss little key things, like they said something about a gun, or he heard something click in the background that sounded like a gun, and then they hear whispering or whatever. The officers can say, I'm heading to that call right now. I'm already there. I'm ready to go.
They can hear the clues.
They can hear all the clues. And then on top of that, the other key factor is that if they click on tonight Live 911, we have 117 schools and charter schools in Chula Vista. It will override anything that's happening. So if there is an emergency call at any of the schools, when you think about Uvalde and what happened there, right? And some of the debrief about, officers not knowing what's happening.
Right. No chain of command, it seemed like.
It will override, and my officers can hear exactly what is happening at that school if there's an emergency situation. So technology and innovation are super important to us. The new thing that we have that we're testing right now, we're the beta testers on this as well, is it's a green light preemption. So what happens is, if there's, in the fire department, they have that in their vehicles, and it's expensive to do, right? but they don't have as many patrol cars as we do. So it would be very difficult for a police department from a fiscal standpoint to be able to do something like this. So what we have done is we worked with a company that went through our computer aided dispatch, and now we use GPS for everything, right? So it GPSs, and now we have the ability through our CAD system to turn these red lights and intersections as an officer is responding to an emergency call to green lights, just like the fire department does. And why is that important? Because seconds matter. And when officers go through intersections, it's one of the most dangerous things to do. Even when you turn on your red lights and your siren, there's always people who aren't paying attention. And so when we have the ability to change those lights and get safely to the scene as quickly as possible to help people when they need it, it's going to change law enforcement. So this is another thing that we're really excited about. Really, we feel like we're trailblazers and we have a responsibility to help law enforcement be better. And that's what we do.
So we've talked a lot about high tech. Let's go low tech. And low tech really is community interaction, because it's another thing that you do very well and your officers do very well. And I saw a little bit of that again this last weekend, but share about some of the initiatives that the police department has in community outreach.
Well, we do Coffee with a Cop is something that we do on a monthly basis. We now started doing tacos with a cop because we are Chula Vista.
That's right.
And we change it up. So we're not just doing it in the morning time. We're now starting to roll into doing some of these events in the evening so that we get a mix from our community. It's hard for sometimes for someone to come around 7 or 8 in the morning because they have to get to work. So we do our National Night Out event where people come to the police department where we open the doors of our PD, because to me, I think some people have a myth about what the police department is like. They don't realize that we're actually teachers, we're volunteers for school, coaches, we're mentors, we're actually parents and grandparents, and we care about our community. So sometimes when you open the doors to your police department and let them come inside and go on a tour, it really changes their perception of policing. And they see us as people who are also a part of the community who care. So we do these national night events. We did Faith in Blue with our faith-based leaders in Chula Vista. They all came together. We had a big event at the park. It was the first time we've ever done it. It's a national Faith in Blue initiative, and we did that this year. So we're always trying to find a way. I meet with a group of pastors. This happened after George Floyd, when there was a lot of just pain and hurt from people and trying to understand, and they were frustrated with policing, and we all came together. I have a group of chiefs of police that work with us, and we all meet together. Even we're here in Coronado right now. Chief K also is a member with Stand in the Gap, and there's a large number of chiefs in San Diego County that meet on a regular basis, and we talk about, concerns, fears. How can we improve the relationship with policing? And you have to be engaged with your community. You have to find a way, for whatever community you're in, to find a way to build relationships and listen.
You also have you already had it? It's your sock and shoe drive.
That will be on December 10th in Chula Vista. And then we have our holiday meal giveaway where we'll feed about 500 families from our police foundation on December 19th.
So can you give me more details about the sock and shoe drive and how the community can respond and support?
Yeah, so our police foundation has been in existence for 20-something years. And the goal is to also receive equipment and training and different things for our police department, like our canine program is paid for through our police foundation. And we're always, the one thing that I wanted to do is I didn't want to just ask for things for the police department. I wanted to find a way to engage with our community and help our community that needed a lift up. And so our school resource officer program is very connected to our youth. And they started noticing some young kids that would show up. The first day of school is a big day, right? And most kids, look really forward to wearing their new shoes, and have all their new school supplies and their new outfits. And it's a big deal to come back to school. And they started noticing some of these kids that would come with tattered shoes and torn and ripped and no socks. And they didn't have a nice backpack. They didn't have any school supplies. And they wanted to find a way to help these kids. And so that's how the shoe and sock program started. We try to do about 500 kids, at least 300 kids we do each year. And community members can go to our webpage, chulavistapolicefoundation.org, and make donations to help support that program. The more that we receive, the more people that we can help. And these kids have a blast. They get to interact with our officers, and it's all on a volunteer basis. And you'll see lines of officers show up. Sometimes I have more officers than people receiving the lift up, because it feels good to help people. It feels good to give. So that's a really great program. And then we have our holiday meal giveaway, and that started, oh my goodness, back in the days of LaDainian Tomlinson. It used to be Giving Thanks with LT. And once, why the Chargers got rid of him, don't even make me go there, but that's okay. We'll let that one go.
We're not going to go down that rabbit hole today.
That one will get me too upset. But we decided as a police foundation to take on the event after LaDainian left San Diego. And now we are able to feed, usually on average, about 500. Our officers give out vouchers. We work with all of our churches in our community, and our like South Bay Community Services, Community Through Hope, different organizations, the YMCA, MAC.
I hope the Rotary Club is supporting this. Okay, good. Got to make sure they're involved.
Well, we're going to make sure. You know that. Yeah. You know you'll get a phone call. Right?
Good, because Rotary clubs need to be involved in that.
It's a great. We have every kid that comes gets a gift, as well as the families will get a frozen turkey and all the fixings for a meal. And sometimes we're able to give away gift cards. And we work with Walmart down on 1150 Broadway, and they've been a strong partner with us for many, many years. And there's lots of organizations and groups in Chula Vista that come together to help us. So that's a big day for us. It's important.
That speaks volumes to the heart, behind the badge. So one of the things that our hometown has done ever since we started publishing in 2013 is, I wouldn't say we pride ourselves, but I would say that we have been honored to share some insight about our subjects that people would not normally know. And we've had the blessing and the grace and the honor to share stories of some of our community leaders. One of my favorite stories is Bob Sutherland, who is a good friend of yours and a friend of mine, and a huge supporter of the police department. And I know he wouldn't want me to say his name out there, but I'm going to, because he is genuinely, he and his wife and his organization is very generous. So we've shared stories about him and other people that even Gray Cox, when he retired, we had a 3-part series that shared information about his life that people who knew him for a lifetime said, I didn't know that about him. So I'm going to take that lead, because this is something that our hometown really believes in. And I will say this, in the years that I've known Chief Kennedy, I've known her to be a very respectful, kind, and transparent person. And I am actually going to put that to the test right now, because Chief Kennedy and I have one thing that we are unashamed of, and that is our faith in God and our faith in Christ. And she is not shy about sharing it. And I find that to be an incredible attribute to your character. So you've shared with me how you pray for your officers and how you let them know, whether they believe or not, that you still pray for them. Share some of those experiences.
Well, every day there's a group of Chula Vista pastors. They send me text messages and verses every single day. And they constantly, especially this started, it really started strong through the whole COVID situation. And then the George Floyd murder was really a hard thing for all of us. And so they started praying for our department. When they would ask me, what do you need, Chief? I need you to pray for my community and pray for my officers. And that has really helped me through some of the toughest times. To me, faith is everything. And I'm the president of a faith-based nonprofit called Project Compassion. And I lead medical mission trips all over the world. And I think, to me, someone said to me when I became chief, I had 25 years on at the department, almost 25 years. They said, how are you going to be able to be successful as a chief of police in Chula Vista when your community is mostly Hispanic? And I said, well, I've been here for 25 years and I've never had a problem, right? And I don't think that I can speak a little bit of Spanish, but it's pretty embarrassing, I have to be honest with you. And I've lost my confidence when it comes to speaking Spanish, because I'm not out there as much out in the field. But I told them that I go all over the world, and my mainstay is Africa. And you don't have to speak the same language. People know when you care about them, when you have a compassionate heart, when you're there to help them through the challenges, and they respect that. And to me, my faith is truly what has helped me. I believe that I have a purpose and that God put me in this job for a reason. And I feel like sometimes when I've gone to some of the most heinous crime scenes, that there's a reason why God put me there so that I could help these people maneuver through this very difficult time. And that to me helps keep me going. And it's what gives me I don't know how to explain it. It's just, it helps me knowing that there's a purpose for me in what I do in law enforcement.
Amen. So anything else you want to cover before we sign off? You got a lot of notes here.
Well,
Oh, you're hiring.
oh my goodness.
We can't
We have
forget that.
31 vacancies right now. Now, for those naysayers out there that think that we're not hiring, we have been hiring. I've hired since I've been the chief of police. December 30th will be 6 years as a chief of police. I have hired myself 150 new officers.
Wow.
We go through about 20 officers per year for retirement, and it's a very difficult job. Some people have medical issues and they can't continue in law enforcement. So we lose usually on average about 20 per year. I've hired 150. We have been so blessed by our community to have them support us through. I never expected a tax measure to go through, but it did.
Mhm.
And we've been able to hire, I believe we're at 50 officers through Measure A. So we will be continuing to hire for a long time. And just to give you make comparison, when I started as chief almost 6 years ago, we were authorized 227 officers. We're now authorized 284. So we have made a lot of progress, but it is difficult in law enforcement right now. If you can think about what we've gone through over the past
Right.
2 years, there are some people who said, why would I want to be a police officer? And I'm here to tell you, come to Chula Vista and come on a ride along and go out there and see what we're doing. Law enforcement is one of the most honorable, amazing professions. Each and every day is different. You get an opportunity to help people through the challenges of life. It's never a dull moment. And it's when you have a heart for service, this is the right job for you. So we are hiring.
So if you can, give us just some basic framework, ages between this and this, obviously no criminal record. But I mean, for those of us thinking I'm too young, I'm too old, I don't speak multiple languages, or I don't know if I want to be in law enforcement on the street, but I want to be maybe part of administration. Quickly, with some of the framework of what you're looking
Well,
for qualifications.
So to be a sworn police officer, you have to be 21. There is discussion that it could change at some point and be a higher age. Probably the discussion I have heard with some legislators is around 25. But 20 and a half, you can apply. But there are also other entry level jobs. If you're not really sure if you want to be a police officer, you might want to be a community service officer. You might want to be traffic enforcement, parking enforcement. You might want to be a dispatcher. We have community service officers. We have detention officers at Chula Vista. We have police record specialists. We have crime lab techs. We have digital evidence technicians. Social media is a new thing that we have people who work on social media and public information officers. Every department has that. So you just have to find what's the right fit for you. I recommend to people find out what the culture is within that organization, and does that fit within the culture that you think is appropriate. I tell people when I interview them that I need to make sure that we're the right fit for you, and we need to make sure that you're the right fit for us. It's a team effort, and that's when you're going to be more successful. There is no age limit on how old you have to be. I've hired people that are police officers out on the street in their 60s, and they're fantastic. So age is irrelevant when it comes to what your character is and what your quality is and what you can provide to the community. So, but it's up to people to research. Go look at the web pages. Look at Chula Vista Police Department's webpage, and you'll see so much information. You can look at dashboards, and it'll tell you everything about crime within your community. It will tell you about all the programs that we offer. So find the right fit. But I'll tell you, don't miss out on the greatest career that you can have, because law enforcement provides that for you.
And you've also said something that, in many cities, and my best friend is a retired detective from the San Jose Police Department. And back in the day when he was an officer, it was made very clear to him by his chief is do not live in the city you serve. And the city like San Jose, well, maybe you can understand that.
That's old school though. That's from the old school days.
But yes, because you say
you should invest in the community that you're in. It depends on you. Okay. Some people might not live in our community because there might be reasons. Okay. Their family might live in another area, or it's too difficult to sell your house right now and then go pay a higher tax bracket. So we understand that, right? You don't have to live in the community that you work in, but there's nothing wrong with you doing that. You find out what's the best fit for you.
Right. And that's the point is Chula Vista in its reputation and its community, and it's being second largest city. I have found it to be very intimate.
Lots of cops live in Chula Vista from all different areas.
This is probably why we're one of the safest cities too. So we've had a great conversation, and I know we could go another hour if we didn't have a time limit on the pockets. And I just might bring you back for part 2 as things progress maybe next year. But I want you to be sure to find November's issue, and it'll be out towards the middle of November, of our hometown newsprint featuring our wonderful Chief of Police, Roxana Kennedy. And be sure when you look into that publication, you will see mentions of these videos that we talked about. There'll be a QR code that will direct you to the video. But when you really see the changes this technology has made and the lives has probably saved and the de-escalation that has occurred, you really can't help but think Chula Vista really is the greatest city. And we all, both the chief and I, invite you to not just invest in the city, but become part of it, communicate, live here. Just know that there is something special about Chula Vista. Any last words?
No, I just want the community to know that your voice is important to us. Make sure that you reach out to us if you have any concerns or issues. And it goes a long way, no matter what community you're in. When you see an officer and you appreciate what they're doing, sometimes just say thank you or wave to them will go a long way, because they really do care about the communities that they serve.
So you guys all know what this means, right? In sign language, love this. I do that for the fire department. I do it with the officers, and I would like to create a movement. When you see a law enforcement officer, show them your love. Tell them you respect. We wave to them, thumbs up. Just let them know that they're appreciated. So this episode number 4, was brought to you by ServPro of Chula Vista. Again, serving over 10,000 happy people. They're available 24/7. To get more information, go to servprochulavista.com. They're family owned and operated here in Chula Vista. A wonderful family. Tell Albert that Michael sent you. And of course, from Minnie Rozlowski and Compass Realty and 24K, my personal realtor, someone I could tell you right now, she's awesome. And she's been a huge supporter of the community. And Faust and Sharif Law Firm, or actually Sharif and Faust lawyers. They specialize in civil litigation, criminal family litigation, employment and appeals. And of course, if you're hungry, there's no other pizza pie to get in town but Pizzo's. So that's it for today. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to our wonderful chief who took time away from her busy schedule to share insights about our police department and its policies. And take care of yourself and take care of your neighbors as well. Goodbye.